reusable assets could be IPs for it. So we are doing that internally as well. But if any company is doing that, that would be of interest.
So let's open up the forum for audience. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah.
Can you share any failure in your career, like, and also how to overcome on that failure?
Okay. So in a way, if you look at the CAD/CAM business that I was doing, and then I moved to testing, it was, you could say that I left CAD/CAM and I moved to testing as a business. In fact, sometimes it would have been better if it was a clear failure, that the business is going nowhere and then you quickly move on to the other thing. I think this was a case, what we were doing was a case where it was doing decently enough and we still had to move to testing. And sometimes people get caught up in what is called a persistence trap. You're doing something reasonably well, you are of that background, so you want to continue doing that, and you don't want to move to an opportunity. It could be bigger, but just because it is new. So I was lucky that I saw this testing opportunity and then left what was going well in the CAD/CAM. Of course, it was not as great as today testing is, but it was going well by itself. We were kind of managing it. But to look at something else that was better and leave this was, I think, the critical point for me. So yes, there are that kind of failures are actually kind of good for you to take stock of where you are and then move on to the bigger things.
Question. You mentioned about the perception people have about testing. So what did you do to first attract people and then motivate them to continue working for you?
Okay. So first of all, we look for people who would be interested in testing. That mindset has to be there. You cannot convert somebody into a tester. So that has to be there. So when we first hired our people, of course they didn't know testing. Even today we are okay with people who probably may not be knowing testing, but who are interested in doing testing. That mindset has to be there. That mindset cannot be created. Now once that is there, then part of your problem is solved. Once that happens, then the story that we have is quite strong. That in any other company that you go to, testers are always second-rate citizens, like it or not. The developers are the leaders, right? They lead the show. How high can a testing manager go in that hierarchy? Ultimately, it will be a development guy who will remain a testing manager. And look at our company now. Completely, complete growth path, right? From a tester, start your career, you can become anything because we don't do anything else. That's a very powerful message. And luckily for us, when we were very strong, also we are one of the leading companies in testing. Today as SQS, we are the leading company. So that brand definitely helps. So the pitch remains the same. If you are a tester, then you have probably the best career path here. And this is not, I'm just saying this, everything, our attrition rates and prove that. We are half the attrition rate of the tester.
So related question, Giri, is what do you look for when you are hiring a person? What makes a good tester?
I conduct a whole training program on this in my organization. But there are certain attributes. Of course, it was much more difficult in the initial periods because you're still figuring out and people didn't know. And today people know what it means to be a tester. But there are a combination of things. One is eye for detail. You're looking at the nooks and corners and so on. But at the same time, you're also looking at the big picture. You get bugs because you're looking at nooks and corners, but you get bugs also because you look at the interfaces of something. So there are combinations of things. The other thing, this is general soft kind of an attribute. The other things that you need is lot of persistence and diligence and so on. By that I mean, I give actually a soccer analogy in my training on this. See, if you're doing testing, then you cannot say, oh, I did this test case, these 10 test cases on the last build, so I don't have to do it again this time. Every build you got to do that. So there's a lot of repetitive, diligent kind of work. Suppose you say I did this test plan, that means you did each and every test case out of that. You cannot say I did a few of them and then I said I did everything. So a lot of diligence, you cannot miss out anything. So the analogy that I give is of soccer. So you have these strikers, very glamorous people, the Ronaldos of the world, right? They score goals. So they miss 5 or 6 chances they score on the 7th chance. They are the heroes because the game was won because of their goal. They will be on the photo and so on. You know, developers the same thing. They may have lots of hits and misses, but ultimately if their code works, they are done. Now look at the goalkeeper. He may save 5 or 6 goals, but he let the 7th chance in. He lose the game. So that's the same thing about testers also. You may find 100 bugs, but if you miss that 101st bug, you will be caught for it. So this is the kind of attitude that we have to look for in testers. It's a very diligent kind of attitude, and you can easily make out. It is not that, and that used to be the thinking of poor developers, send them to testing. And that is one reason why we still keep scoring over our competition. This is generally the trend even today. Get freshers into testing, get the people who are poor developers into testing, and so on. And here we go to a customer, we are actually enthusiastic about testing. We're not just openly using it as a door opener. That makes a difference.
So any demographic, unique qualities of good testers that you see? Somebody who's studied here, who's come from this, makes a good tester.
Okay, so I talked about skills first of all. You got to have these testing skills. People have to be very process oriented in testing, more than I would say development. People may not agree with, but the testers have to be more process oriented, and they must have enthusiasm. So these 3 things are written in my these 3 things you got to have. But demographics, I don't know. Are you mean to say how many people?
Women are better testers. Men
no,
are something like that.
Some very controversial statements. No, I don't think that is true at all. I don't think that is true.
Maybe he's asking about the educational background.
Not at all.
The engineers make better tests.
Yeah, exactly.
Not at all. I don't see there are tester. It's a mindset thing for sure. It's an aptitude thing for sure. And more and more as we grow.
So you have a way to test these things, aptitude and stuff.
Right. I mean, generally speaking now, because the testing career is well established, it's not a problem. This used to be a case earlier. Now it's not a problem. People know that they want to get into testing. They don't have to drive that anymore. Yeah.
One question I had is basically these days companies like Google and LinkedIn, the web-based companies are moving towards where they are forcing their developers to do testing also. And that's what the reason is, like the developers are doing not only development but testing and automation. Everything is done by developers. What do you think is the scope for the new guys who are entering into testing, or the companies who want to develop in providing services in testing? Is there any scope? Or
Yes. I have a very technical answer for this. It's a very good question actually. I know that Google and Facebook and all these people are going for technical testing and so on. I work more on the enterprise side of things. See, enterprises were there even before software came along. So software is catching up as far as enterprise automation goes, which means that a lot of the bugs that you get in enterprise software are because requirements are not covered. Right? So there you will need good testers, you will need people who have the domain background and so on and so forth. When you come to Facebook and Google and so on, they weren't there before software came along. They don't have any requirement backlog. They are creating their requirements. So they come up with a new thing, they are creating requirements for their users. So their challenge is not covering requirements, their challenge is to make sure how it doesn't crash, for example, and those kind of things. That's where they need those technical pieces. But if you look at even percentage-wise, enterprise software is today much larger. You look at different domains and so on. So there is a need for technical testers, and there is a need for these kind of functional business testers as well. So where they are more verticalized. So there, people need to focus on getting domain knowledge. On the technical side, what you're saying is right, but there could be even there specific testing opportunities for, say, example, security guys or load performance guys and so on. So there is always, specialization always keeps happening. So there is no dearth, I think, for the need for testers. Yeah.
Yes. Till now, what you said was like you keep on moving to the next niche thing. So first you started with gaming, then you move on to new verticals. So what is the next thing you are planning on? And the second question what I had is about security testing. I mean, I heard that there is a lot of scope, but we don't have a lot of good people. So are you planning on doing something on it?
Yeah. So the first question, what is the next thing? So currently, as I mentioned, I am focusing on the product testing initiative, which is interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, SQS was focused on end customer testing. So they didn't have this product testing, and we grew it out of India.